Welcome to Babes with Books. I'm Leslie Winfield, and we are here at Pandora's Books and Tea, and I have a couple of the babes with me.
Hi, my name is Seveneves, and I am very grateful to have started posting on and I'm Maya Foster. Thanks for coming out. We're excited to share this book with you. And we'd like to let you know that here on Facebook Live, we are looking for your comments and we're looking for your questions. As soon as we see one, we'll dive right into it. Let's find out what this book is about. Leslie.
All right, so tonight we are going to talk to you a little bit about Seveneves. Hopefully you've all read the book, but for those of you who haven't had a chance to read it yet, I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit about the storyline for you. So this book is written by Neal Stephenson. It is in the science fiction genre. It's a post-apocalyptic book, nominated for a Hugo Award for Best Novel. He's also got a very extensive list of other books, so if you like this one, then you'll probably find some more that you like. So basically, this book is split into three parts. The first part deals with the moon shatters into seven pieces, and it's just continues to spiral out of control. And there's a whole bunch of other pieces going to come down, and so the human race has to try and figure out how they're going to survive this. And so their answer is to build a cloud ark. Which brings us to part two, where the hard rain comes. They've done all this work to try and build this ark, and we have the surviving people up in the ark. There's a little bit of political espionage and political kind of sabotage that happens, and in the end, really what the pinnacle part of the story for me was that everyone dies, except for
It's a little pinnacle.
Yeah, a little bit pinnacle. Everyone dies. Spoilers.
Yeah.
Except for 8 women, and one of them has reached menopause. So they have to try and figure out how to continue the human race, and they have a very extensive conversation about that, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then the third part of the book focuses on 5,000 years after the fact. So the human race has evolved. We actually have 7 different races now, based from the Seveneves, and the book goes on from there. So, yeah, what did you guys think of the book?
Well, what did you think? You just gave us an idea of what it's about. So now give us an idea of what you thought.
Well, I liked the book a lot. I read science fiction, so I thought that it was really interesting once, for me, I got to the second half of the book. So it's a really long book.
It is.
847 pages, which I'm not afraid of, but I felt that a lot of the precursor in part 1 and part 2 could have been shrunk down. I wasn't as interested in the science part of the science fiction. There was a lot of hard science in it. So if you took that out for me, the rest of it was really good. And I loved after everyone dies, I loved the social implications that went along with that. So I liked the book a lot.
Yeah, and I would agree with Leslie on that definitely the science got a little bit dry for me, but I wanted to continue on because it's very much a book about people, and I love books about people. I'm a character person who loves characters in books, and that's one of the reasons why I like this book so much, because it explored all sorts of different parts of who we are as people, who we are as a human race, and that's what I thought was kind of interesting. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, actually.
I would say overall that I definitely enjoyed this book. There were parts of it that I didn't enjoy. I thought the first part was science heavy. Like I was skimming, and I mean sometimes you got it with 847 pages. And then there was that middle part that was just awesome for character. Again, I read for character as well, Shauna. So that middle part where they're really deciding about the Seveneves and the characteristics, and even the bit of the drama that's happening amongst the different people that are still up there in space, really captured me. But I have to say I was really disappointed. I was looking forward to the end part because Leslie had read it before me. So I was really like, I'm going to love this. But the 5,000 years later part really let me down. I kind of just was like, bleh. At that part. And so to build up and up and up and get through that hard science and then be let down was hard for me. But that's also just because science fiction isn't necessarily my comfort genre. I wouldn't even say that it's like my uncomfort genre. It's my never go there genre. So to read a hard science fiction book at 847 pages, my husband at home thought I was crazy. But I would read science fiction again after starting this exploration. I mean, you do have to skim those words that are kind of just, you've never seen before. But honestly, this book, the first sentence is, "The moon blew up without warning and for no apparent reason." I mean, who doesn't want to keep reading a book at that? And if science fiction can offer that kind of excitement, I'm all over that. Would you read more science fiction? Is this a new genre for you?
It is a little bit. I used to read more science fiction when I was younger. I was more nerdy and into those kinds of things, like the David Eddings and those kinds of things. But I had kind of strayed from it. And so this was a great segue back into science fiction for me. Again, part of the reason why I stopped reading science fiction was the sciencey stuff. I'm the character girl. I want to know about the people in the book. So this book, for me, it gave me that. I skipped over the parts that, to be honest, that got a little sciencey. I skipped. But I think I will read it again, read other kinds of science fiction again, especially if on the recommendation about the characters. Like The Martian is an example of a book that I would like to read because it's about him. I'm sure there's sciencey stuff in there, but it was a good segue to push me into maybe reading a little bit more science fiction again.
And you said this is your...
Yeah, well, I actually never considered myself a science fiction reader up until about a few years ago. But then when I started going back through my reading history, I actually was like, oh, I actually read a lot of science fiction. Because I never really thought of post-apocalyptic fiction, and I love post-apocalyptic fiction. If people die and everyone's like, oh, destitute, and the world is all crappy, I love that.
Yeah.
So I never really thought of that as science fiction, but I ultimately it is science fiction. And so I've been reading a lot of post-apocalyptic fiction. Of course, that's big right now. Dystopian is kind of a big thing right now. It's interesting that you bring up The Martian, though, because ultimately that's a very sciencey science fiction, and I kind of feel like a lot of the really big science fiction names and books right now are very science driven. There's the hard science, and I think true science fiction lovers love that aspect. And they'll call out an author who is writing about science fiction. I guess if you want to be a science fiction author, you almost have to do the research and figure out the quantum physics of it, and make sure that you know that your science would work. Otherwise, you'll just get a whole bunch of trolls on the internet.
Because even though I was bored with his science parts and thought that those words were totally out there, I don't know that bored is the right word. Actually, that seems harsh. Up? I totally do. I am a Wikipedia person. Like, I'm watching a movie, I'm on Wikipedia. I'm reading a book, I'm on Wikipedia, and I know it's not like the be-all end-all, folks, so don't drag me down for that one. But I mean, it just gives me a little bit. So but I liked, when it came down to looking at the book as a whole, I liked what felt like almost real science of that first part, and the last part was that kind of futuristic science, the sky train. I just thought, really? Are we going there? Whereas I can believe astronauts going into space and, doing things with rocks, doing things with small robots, which is one of the parts of the books. There's one female character who she builds small robots and she uses them to mine and she uses them to do different things in space. And I could believe that because you're seeing that down here. But the future stuff, 5,000 years in the future, I just thought, nah.
See, and I love the aspect of the terraforming and the future portion of it, and I really wanted more of that, which is why I was like, cut out the whole first half and switch that first half in the end, because I wanted to find out about the pingers and I'm really hoping, Neal Stephenson, if you ever watch this, please do the sequel to this book, because I really want to know what happens. Are they going to war? Like, this book ends off as all of a sudden there's going to be a possible war happening, and I wanted to know.
I'm so loyal. I'm so loyal. You show me 5,000 years later, and I know that all of those Seveneves are gone that I've been attached to for 600 pages.
But their children
I'm done.
There.
I've never read like Anne of Green Gables past when she has kids. No, I want to read about Anne. Don't show me your kids. I want to read about Dinah and Ivy. I don't want to read about their 5,000-year-old generation. So as a character reader, that's where I get lost.
And you're right. I was disappointed after they have that really important conversation conversation, and then all of a sudden it's 5,000 years later. I was like, what? They're gone.
Wait a
Like,
minute.
that's it?
I did read that about this book, that he really kind of abandons you at a few points for characters. There's that one. The death of Marcus is pretty rushed. You don't hear a lot about Dinah and how she's dealing with that, but you know she is because they mention it quickly. There's the other guy, and I'm missing his name right now, but where he's out adrift in space and they talk to him until he dies.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
He goes out to get the
Um,
comment.
and then the Doc Dubois love story at the beginning. He's a massive character through the rest of the book.
But it's
all of a sudden he's
interesting.
just in love.
Because all of those people that you just talked about are men.
Ah.
And maybe the men in this don't really matter.
Well, that brings us to another interesting issue, hey? The women of this book. Yeah. You had a woman that you were a bit contentious about, hey?
Yes. Julia's character. I didn't mind her too much. She's the president of the United States, so I didn't mind her too much at the beginning. But she decides that she's going to basically hijack a shuttle and get up there on the space station with everyone else. She has no right to be there, other than she's a president.
So why doesn't she have a right? Tell us why she doesn't have a
Well,
right.
because there's a draw across the world of the people that are allowed to be up there. It's supposed to be a random draw to be fair to everyone. And I'm very much a personality of everyone has equal rights and everyone should have a chance. So here's this woman in power who decides she's going to hop on and go up there at the last minute, just before Earth is gone, and gets up there. Not only does she sneak up there, she pretty much she puts the whole thing in peril because of how she gets there and the mess she makes. And it's a cluster, really, because she really...
We stopped there for
Yes. She makes a complete mess and just about kills everyone, all because she's being selfish, in my opinion. So that really ticked me off in that I have kind of a love-hate relationship with the whole idea of management. Maybe I'm a little too socialist, I don't know. That everyone should be, there's a little bit of politics there. Everyone should be equal and have equal chance and equal rights to be part of whatever project they're taking on. Like, everyone has a role to play, and she basically, to me, did not have a role to play other than she's a head of state.
But do our leaders have a role to play? Like, really, they took a bunch of children. So my response to that is they took a bunch of children, said we're going to cast lots, we need the young ones. So they had this lottery, and they sent all of these two, like a male and a female from each kind of major center, and said, we're going to send you to training, and then we're going to send you up into the Ark. Do they have the background and history that they need to lead and govern? Like, does there need to be a government of some kind and someone with that leadership power, or not power, but ability up on the Ark? And was there?
I mean, and going with Leslie, I think that we recognize figures such as that. So if Justin Trudeau were walk in here right now and give me an order, I would probably follow it, especially if it was something like personal safety. I'd be like, well, he knows what he's talking about. So if you have Julia up there, is she act, or could she act, as a calming presence? Despite the fact that, yes, she does abuse her power to get up there. But, I mean, we were talking about it earlier, and if I had the money and I had the resources to get myself up there, I would have, I think. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to wait for a bunch of moon rocks to hit me.
Yeah.
We have a question I'm going to interrupt you. From Zach. Leslie says science fiction is moving towards needing to be more and more accurate. Maya mentions that the softer or more out there science fiction, the fiction part, was less believable. Do you think this trend of more accurate science in sci-fi means it will be easier or harder for new to sci-fi readers to enjoy the genre?
Yeah, we actually had that conversation because Maya's fairly new to sci-fi, and I thought maybe that the hard science was detracting from some of the people that wanted to get into sci-fi. So I think that there's a real balance there between sticking to the real science of science fiction and making it so that your readers are engaged. Now, I have a little bit of a, I'm just going to be controversial here. I think that readers are becoming dumber. None of our listeners today, of course, that does not apply to you. But But the stuff that seems to make it on the bestsellers list is not literary fiction.
Yeah.
And not that literary fiction is what you have to read, and definitely science fiction has never been touted as literary fiction. But I think that people are busy. They don't have a lot of time to read. They want something easy. They have hectic lives. So when you read, you want to just kind of sink into something that you can get into.
Yeah.
And reading science fiction is a little bit too intellectual, I think, for some people.
I agree with a really good balance, but going outside of Seveneves, The Martian was really popular in this past year, and a lot of people were reading The Martian. And it's hard science. I actually tried to read it, and I may have thrown it across the room.
You're not giving me a very good
She did.
motivation to read this book.
So I don't know. Like I don't know. I can't really give science fiction a good sell here for people trying to get into the genre. If I were to try and give science fiction a sell at this point, I would probably say pursue like a juvenile, maybe YA, but actually juvenile science fiction first, because you're going to get that story in a shorter amount of time rather than a massive epic. And you're going to get some science, but it's probably going to be at the level that we recognize, honestly, like our high school biology or physics, rather than someone who received thousands of dollars to research it and then write about it, because that's, what authors get. So that would be my recommendation, is to pursue something in that area. And unfortunately, I don't have a great title right now off the top of my head, but maybe we'll post one on our link if you are interested.
Yes.
And some
A good science fiction list for people if you think that you're intrigued by the idea of these characters and this idea of a future.
Actually, if you go to the Pandora's Books blog, and I have a list of read-alikes for
for
70s.
right.
So, and that's from Novelist, which is accessible from your local library. There's my library plug for tonight. What do you think, Shauna, about the whole science fiction changing?
Well, one of the reasons why I read science fiction in high school was reading the 1984, because I would classify that kind of science fiction-y. The Day of the Triffids, that was kind of science fiction. The Chrysalids,
right?
Those kinds of books I was exposed to. So they were simpler, I think. They're more, I guess they were kind of biology related. So maybe that's why they tweaked my crank a little bit, but because I love biology. But I don't know. Like I think this one is a bit too much. That it's just too much. Like you say, they don't do that in high school anymore. Those kinds of things. It's very simple. It's
a thinker.
Yeah, and the whole social aspect of stuff that's in this book too, right? The politics and things like that. So yeah. Anyway.
So I think we have another question, but before we do that, I just want to talk about one of the very pinnacle moments in the book, because I think it's a really important thing to talk about today. So everyone dies, as we talked about, and there's really only 7 Eves left, 7 people that can continue the human race. And they decide, there's a geneticist on that survived, conveniently.
Yes, very convenient.
Well, I would bring in a geneticist up. Like,
Yes,
I really would.
well, she survived, so that's what that was a little
right,
convenient
surviving.
So basically, they have this really intense discussion about taking out things like cancer and the illnesses that they know have afflicted the human race for thousands of years. And the conversation turns to illnesses like being bipolar or mental illness. And one of the Eves actually does suffer from bipolar disorder, and she feels that made her who she was. And so they have this really, really good discussion about what parts of you should keep and not keep. And in the end, they decided that they would each get to be in charge of their own offspring, and they could pick one thing that they would want to highlight. So Dinah, she's the roboticist. She's a natural leader, so she thinks leadership skills. Ivy, she wanted intelligence to be kind of really important for the next 5,000 years. Julia, who was the president that came up there, she survived. She wanted politically minded people to be highlighted Moira. She was the geneticist. She actually decided that her offspring would be able to shift from anything to try and create balance. The Teclins were strength. Camilla was being non-confrontational. She was the Malala character in the book. And then there was Ida, who made each one of her children different because she didn't want them to be pigeonholed. She was the one that was bipolar. So
she was really worried about the formation of races.
Yes.
And how all of these people were choosing this characteristic, and that in the future this was going to end up being actually races rather than just helping populate the world again.
Yeah. And she was right.
She was right.
Yeah.
So what would you, like, if faced with that decision, in your guys' opinion, what do you think is the most important thing that you should highlight in the human race moving forward? You have to decide what, either one of those or one of your own thing. What's most important?
Well, I was already muttering about not the politicians. Sorry, my politician friends, but yeah. To me, the Camilla kind of trying to bring people together and help people work together and understand each other's downfalls and, you know, explore each other's strengths. And I don't know, I think she was a better person. There's my personality, right? Like, let's just all get along. Right? Like, why can't we all just get along? Why do we have to fight?
Well, that's no fun.
What's that?
That's no fun.
Yeah. So that was something I thought should have been continued on. That, and I'll be honest, that I was pretty excited that it was just women. That, because I always make the joke that if women ran the world, it would be a completely different place. So
come on, men. Let's hear your comments.
Right. So it was interesting that there were 7 women that were deciding the fate of humanity, because I think we have a better idea of how to make everyone get along.
Non-confrontational. Definitely not me.
What? No.
I think that I would have gone with Dinah, and she chose natural leadership. I think that that's something that I would want in myself, and I think that could help actually keep the peace, actually, in maybe more of a confrontational way. But if you have someone leading people towards a goal or helping people figure things out in a leadership form, then that does help keep that, I would think, as long as you don't have like a selfish leader. But so I would have gone with Dinah, and yeah, that definitely would have been my choice. And I agree with you. The political minded, I could have gone away with Julia's characteristic and her. And then, I mean, you do meet all of these characters later too. So not only do you see the choices that they make, but then 5,000 years later, you see their children and what's kind of happened as these races. Yes, we were using that word.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because my husband's probably shaking his head right now. How those have formed and what they've done. And that is kind of the least appealing to me, as you saw that 5,000 years later was that
interesting, because you guys are talking about peace, but you're also talking about get rid of all the political leaders. So you have like peaceful anarchists sitting at the table here, which is really interesting. I think for me, I probably would have chosen what Ida chose. So all of her children were different. She was the youngest. She had the most children. Leadership is kind of the first thing that twigged in my head, because that's what I tend to lean towards myself and my personality. But if everyone was a leader, oh my God, we'd kill each other. So, yeah.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. What was the question?
Hi, Maya. You look fabulous.
Oh.
You know your books, girl. Great
well,
chat, ladies.
That was a comment.
Thank you, Jen.
Well, thanks, Jen. Very good. We do
awesome.
Enjoy books around here,
Yes,
actually.
for sure.
Any chance to talk about books, and I'll jump at it for sure. Yes.
All right.
So we do have some more questions that we can do, but please send in your questions.
Yeah,
we have
I'm watching.
a little bit of time left here. So definitely let us know what you think.
Okay.
You got another question?
You have a question?
Yeah, I can definitely do another question.
Sure.
This one could definitely resonate with people, especially myself. I have 2 little kids right now. So they decide that they can host a lot of people up on the Ark. at first, before the hard rain falls and everybody's gone. So they pull lots from countries all over the world. They want each country to have a choice, boy and girl, and then they're going to send them up to the Ark. And then there arises a lot of issues from this. Some countries don't get anyone chosen, and they start... revolting is the word that comes to mind. And then there's other things. And then other areas come into play is if they're choosing just kids just to be bodies. How do you then also have the people that you feel are important up on the Ark? How do you have the people that can be the geneticists and the scientists and the mechanics even, and all of those different things? So it definitely resonated with me, and it was done fairly in some ways and not fairly in others. And I really struggled with this method, and struggled with the idea of these kids being thrust into this situation just as bodies. And I think that you would have been better off going with adults, experienced adults who knew what they were choosing, who had life experience, and who could breed, I guess, and then create that future, but could also interact in a much different way. How do children learn to be adults without that around to learn from, I guess? So that was my opinion on that. What about you, Shauna?
I again was thinking of the fairness thing. I wasn't thinking so much about the children, that there were so many people that got left out that probably should have been included, people that would have been useful, would have been able to do things that could save humanity. So I guess similar to as you, with how are kids going to make that?
Yeah, the problem though with like sending all the adults that know everything is that there's not a lot of diversity there. Number one, every different race here on Earth, you want to be able to represent that. So you want to have, like, they brought their genetic material up. They wanted to make sure that you did that. There was a lot of non-randomness that was had as well in the book, which was kind of an interesting aspect of there of how fair is that. And really, I think there's no other way. They did send the people that needed to set things up. They kind of got chosen because of their expertise at first, but then the Arkies, the one that would live in these little modules, were the ones that were kind of brought later. So I think that that's really the only way you could do it.
Yeah.
As unfair as it is with, well, and really, who wouldn't want their child to be chosen?
Yeah. So a couple questions out there. Thanks, guys. Stephanie says, I was thinking that ability to learn would be one that would be desired as a trait.
Oh, yeah.
That's
I
a
agree
really good
with
point.
you, Stephanie. That's huge. I mean, as you look at these 7 traits, I don't even agree that any of the 7 of them were the most important out there. Yeah. I mean, the ability to learn. Like, what if these people have no, or not even just ability, but interest? Right?
Well,
Ivy
was the one that wanted highly intelligent people. She valued intelligence and learning because she thought if you could puzzle and problem solve, you could figure things out.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
True. I definitely think that's...
So, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And Zach says, any traits that you think would be great to exemplify in an individual that might not be good for a whole society to have? Forgive me if this is already covered in the 3rd part of the book. Didn't read it. If it was, what are your thoughts on it? So traits that might not be good.
No, that's not covered in the 3rd part of the book. You do meet 2 more races that survived on Earth by digging and going underwater. So, yeah.
Well, I think one thing that got brought up was trying to get rid of the aggression in people. So that was what the Malala character that you guys were identifying with, she wanted people to be non-confrontational because she knew, like, you're going to be in these little arcs and in close confined spaces for at least the next 1,000 years. We don't want to fight with each other. So I think aggression, but then that's also what drives us to move forward in our lives. So it's hard to say that one person's traits are better than the other, and you can't really say that.
What about humor, though? I mean, who doesn't, on a personal ad, want a guy or a gal with a sense of humor, right? And we're going to get rid of that from people? Or, well, not encourage it. Because that is the thing. Nothing was gotten rid of. They were all just, they had the chance to amplify one. Yeah. So, I mean, there is that.
Well, they got rid of diseases and stuff. But what if it's a disease that makes us stronger, right?
I mean, you look
Like
at a lot of
and that
people that
was-
survive something.
Now you're
and
getting
they
into
are-
religious debate.
Yeah.
Let's not go there.
So that debate could go on forever.
Yes,
And Babes with
thank
Books
you.
is drawing to an end.
Yeah.
We do want to let you know that we're going to be back on October 13th, Thursday, right after Thanksgiving. We are going to be looking at The Fabulous Sisters Brothers by Patrick DeWitt. It was nominated for a number of awards and won a number of awards the year that it was published, including the Governor General's Award here. And the Rogers Writers Trust Fiction and the Giller Prize, it was a finalist for. It's a bit of a modern Western. We have a different kind of relationship there. Instead of this female relationship, we have a brotherly male relationship to explore. And we will be, again, looking for your questions and comments next month about Sisters Brothers on October 13th at 7 p.m. And thank you so much for joining us, everyone. It was a great time.
Yes, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
And thank you again to Brass Media and Pandora's Books for all the work they did in setting this up for us.
Great. Thank you.
Night.